also in the newsletter that Lynn spoke of. Sorry. Okay, the Preservation Board, just to give you a little bit of an idea, if you read last week's Boone County Reporter, there was about 4 articles in there that dealt with the Preservation Board. We have a cemetery grant that we need to raise matching funds for. We are going to have Derby Day at Dinsmore, which is a lot of fun. It's kind of, you can dress up in 1920s outfits or not, no choice. But come to Dinsmore on Kentucky Derby Day, and we'll just have a lot of fun. The other thing that we're doing is we're putting together a book on Burlington. It's a picture book, It's a photograph book like the Boone County images that was done a few years ago. So that's a little bit about the Preservation Board. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. I know that you're all here to not hear me, you're here to hear Bruce. He is a wonderful guy. He helps out a lot. He's the vice president of the Boone County Historical Society. He was county judge executive for over 20 years, or about 20 years. I am not native to Boone County, I'm sorry. But Bruce is a great guy, and I know he'll do this history very well. I'm going to go this way instead because I'm running the computer.
Okay, and thank you, Lori. And she started with us at 6 o'clock this morning here, just putting this together. It's been such a strong team effort, and without Jim Duvall and Francis Barlow, I wouldn't be here because I couldn't have done it without their help. And of course, we have to acknowledge the work that's been done in the past by William and Ann Fitzgerald and William Conrad, who put together and saved in book form so much of our history. And thank God that we did have these people interested in preserving our history in the past. And most recently, Ann Fillmore, and Ann just stand a moment, because Ann Fillmore did the book put out by the Joint PTAs of Brow and Gray that was called Into the Past. What the name of it? Show the book. There. A Peek into the Past. This is the most recent book that's been done, and she did so well with it that we'd like to see it republished and re-edited. With excluding some of the genealogical charts in the background. But it was a wonderful project to interest our young people into our history. And so before you leave, if you are interested in working on a future book, a second edition, you might say, Peeks into the Past, I do see Ann. She really is talented in that area, and she teaches at Rouse School. Again, this could not have been done without the help of those people. And we called on Jack Rouse's book of Boone County and the Civil War, a wonderful book. So much of our information came from there, at least relative to that era of our time. And again, in the background, we have Sid Walters on the camera and Steve Conrad. So these are going to be preserved for our posterity on tape in case something happens to me before my 75th birthday comes up on March the 21st. All right, now we can dim the lights, and I've got this marker, and we will try to bring back the thoughts of what was from yesterday's. And I'm reminded when King Arthur sat down with those boys after the battle and said, remember from December until December, each night when you lie down upon your cot, think back of all the tales that you remember of Camelot. Well, this is the Camelot that I grew up with. And believe me, to call it Camelot, it was hard times, as I recall, for the most part. The union that I knew stretched basically from 1930 up to the present. And this, okay, we're going to start you out with beautiful countryside of Union. And that's the way it was, and you can still find some pieces of this. But Union was an early settlement of the county, and let me give you some of that background, how we got to be settled. Now, Boone County was settled two ways. One, the people that came down the Ohio River and settled Petersburg and Constance and Taylorsport and the river towns. That was the interstate system in the late 1700s. You traveled by river. And so the first settlements came from the river and on up the creeks. Then, in 1800, another group came up, basically from Madison County, Virginia. And basically they were from the Lutheran, the Germanic colony of Virginia. They came out of Madison County, and when my wife visited the Hebrew Lutheran Church in Madison County, Virginia, we saw the names of all the people that settled the Hopeful Lutheran Church and the Hebrew Lutheran Church here in Boone County. And those names I will give to you in a moment. But, so, two groups of people came into the county from the river, and most of those people came out of Pennsylvania and down the river. Many of those were of German extraction and Irish. A lot of the Irish came that way too, especially out of Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. The others came out of Madison County, Virginia. And on their way to the Cumberland Gap, picked up a lot of people that decided to hop on their wagon trains with them. They came into Boone County in the early, right about the time that we established statehood. Remember, our county was, well, Kentucky became a state in 1792. The county became officially a county in 1799. When we became a county in 1799, we had 1,500 people in Boone County. That was enough to have a county in those days. We were the 30th county in the state to be formed. Petitioned legislature in 1798. It was we elected our people, Cave Johnson, the first clerk of Boone County in 1799. Now, this area, as these pioneers came up the Cumberland Trail from Virginia, picking up, as I said, a lot of people that joined them, several Irishmen and such, that joined the group that weren't really a part of the Lutheran congregation. They came in and their union was wilderness. If you can imagine, this was nothing but trees, folks. It's hard to imagine. It was nothing but trees. And the first settlers came here, had to cut down the trees, and they used the trees to build their house, heat their homes, cook their food, and burned up the rest. Jacob Fowler purchased the land around Union from Humphrey Marshall I. Humphrey Marshall was a land speculator and a scoundrel. He was part of the Burr conspiracy and the Spanish conspiracy. But he bought up all this land, primarily from the Revolutionary soldiers and his contacts in Washington. He then started parceling it out. One of the first settlers in this area was Hugh Steers. Hugh Steers is buried on what was our farm. His grave is still there. It's by the golf course, near the clubhouse of the golf course at Lansing Point Golf Course. On that tombstone, it reads, born in Ireland in 1756, immigrated to America, and when he was 17 years old, was a revolutionary soldier. He was captured by the Indians on the Battle of Larley Allen. He was captured and then was able to escape. Well, the war was over in 1783, when the Treaty of Paris was concluded. He took his money, came to Union, bought land from Jacob Fowler, and in the process was smart enough to marry Jacob Fowler's daughter. Probably got his money back that way. And established one of the earliest farms there where the Lansing Point Golf Course is today. And later, my great-great-grandfather bought that. Okay, now, well, as far as, let's see a slide now, Lori. As far as traveling through Union, perhaps one of the first travelers through Union, of course, was Meriwether Lewis. He did it in 1803. And like the other pioneers that came to Union, Meriwether Lewis followed the Buffalo Trail. That was the road, was the Buffalo Trail. Part of that Buffalo Trail still exists on what we call Tadpole Lane, or the old toll road on our farm, but it used to go right where Rowell School is today. And it used to be very apparent. Rowell School has covered it up. But that was the Buffalo Trail that Meriwether Lewis came through on his way to Big Bone, launched the Lewis and Clark expedition. Now, this, of course, is one of the earliest houses, and Benjamin Piatt Fowler's home, built in about 1818. That has been remodeled to an extent, but basically that is the home. And of course, it enjoys another historical significance because here, during the Civil War, where John Hunt Morgan died and replenished himself and Captain Hines before they went on down Big Bend Road and stayed at the Corbin House over there on his escape from the penitentiary of Columbus, Ohio during the Civil War. Now, if you've gone to a Boone County Historical Society meeting about a year ago, you would have heard me give the talk about John Hunt Morgan and his escape, so I'm not going to bore you with it now. But that was was an important house and one of the earliest and the only stone house, I've been told, that's not located along the Ohio River in Boone County. All right, now see what we've got. And this is the home originally of Morris Lansing, one of the first settlers to the area. Presently, my son lives there. My great-grandfather, Charles Philip Baker, bought that in 1912 after Morris Lansing died. It's a very interesting story. That house at one time, there was a slave cabin right behind the house where I lived in the summertime because that's the wages I got for working on the farm, slave wages. I lived in the slave cabin, and my mother called it was known as Mary Paul's cabin. Now, this wing has been added, but that's a log house. And in theory, they took away some of the plaster so you can see the original logs of the house. Now, leave that on a moment, Lori, because this community that became Union was really a community of families. Again, as I say, those that came out of Virginia, the Lutherans, and then those that kind of tagged along. Hugh Steers, of course, was one of those that came from the river to Union. So some of the people came from the river, some came up the Cumberland Trail. I'm going to give you some of these names. And interesting thing about Union. When I grew up in Union, I mean, I'm talking about in the 30s, and everybody was related, right? I mean, man, my mother, as we drive down the road, there's Aunt Susie, there's Cousin Ella, that's the way we go. I'm going to give you some of those names because they're important. That's what made Union the community. The Lansing, Stancifer, Scott, Rice, Clarkson, Hicks, Huey, Tanner, Ayler, Dickerson, Oots, Stevenson, Chrysler, Krigler, Blankenbaker, Rowley, Craddock, Connor, Rochelle, Beauchelle, Bristow, Norman, Frazier, Barlow, and Corbin. Those were the names, and I didn't get them all. But I mean, all of those people were interrelated. And if not by blood, by their church and by their soul. They were the community. Now, what's coming in? All right, one of the earliest maps of Union. And this is the 18, there's Union located, there's Florence, here's Burlington. And notice, there's not much else. Now we have Connorsville, or Corneliusville, actually. That vanished. Francisville is still there with a sign. Petersburg, which of course was the biggest city, Hyatt's Landing. Big Bone isn't truly designated on there. Right here is Big Bone. There's the south part of Big Bone. This map, as you'll notice, it may not be, it looks a little bit out of joint right there. There's Verona. Gaines Crossroads, that was that became Walton. I mean, Walton is a new town compared to Union. Walton exists because of the railroads as much as anything. I mean, that's what made Walton right here. It started at Gaines Crossroads. New Lancaster, whoever heard of that? Visalia. The Mount Zion Road at those times was called the Union Visalia Road. All right, and but this is the earliest map, 1839. Am I right, Jim? That it was incorporated by the act of the state legislature in 1839. So Union became a rather important place. At this time, of course, Petersburg was the most heavily populated. And there was a fight for years over whether Burlington or Union would be the county seat. While I was researching some records on elected officials in Boone County, they held elections finally to see whether it was going to be Union or Burlington. I think the reason they took Burlington, number one, the land was given to them. It was Greg's camp and given to them. It was laid out with beautiful squares and streets and a grid pattern. One thing about Union, kids never got in trouble in Union riding around the block because there isn't any block to ride around. There was never any streets in Union. There was, you had Hathaway Road, Mount Zion Road, and US 42. That's it. Okay, next slide. All right. Now, of our earliest institutions, Whitehaven Academy, Whitehaven Institute, that was located right across the road from Elm Tree Place. The Elm Tree Place was the name of our family home, which was originally the Morris Frazier home, because of the humongous elm tree that was in the front yard. And that tree had to be 300 years old because the house was named Elm Tree Place, finally, the Dutch elm disease got that. It came down in 1946. Real sorry about that. But you can read that. There were two main institutions of higher learning, or learning, period. Boone County, Morgan Academy in Burlington, and Whitehaven. I not like the idea institute, they generally call it academy. I think that, and also it was known as the female academy. But they did take boys. Okay, there it is. Oh my goodness, this place was there through all my young life. What a beautiful home. I was purchased, Lynn Frazier owned it at one time. And after he passed away around 1930 maybe, Dan Freeze bought it. Freeze Jailworks in Ludlow, Kentucky. Dan Freeze really remodeled it, did it beautifully. My brother and I used to walk across the street, and my mother would usually spank us for walking across the street at that time, because occasionally a car would go by. But only occasionally. The hired help on our farm used to sit on the fence on Derby Day, because that's the only time you saw traffic on US 40 was Derby Day. Some people can remember that. Okay, Whitehaven Academy. Lynn Frazier lived there, and after he died, Dan Freeze bought it, and unfortunately, Doc Edwards' chicken place bought that to raise chickens, and he tore the house down. One of those things that should have been saved. The Evans lived there because they worked for Doc Edwards. Does anybody here remember Doc Edwards' fried chicken? Okay, you know what?
I've eaten there.
Yeah, huh?
I've eaten there.
Okay, sure, okay. Irene Patrick served tables there. Okay. Whitehaven, wonderful institution. Tremendous history. My mother even wrote a story about that once. Okay, now we're 1860, and Whitehaven was built, I think, in 1854. So we're kind of going, according chronologically here. This is interesting. At Union, the basket meeting. This is, so far in the past, okay, look at it. These are the people running for President of the United States. John J. Crittenden, Bell. Oh, I can't see all those names in here. But, okay. And these are the important people they invited. See, James A. Corbin, L.L. Yow. This was just before the Civil War. And at that period of history, Boone County, okay, I guess you could move on, because the Boone County Union became a stronghold for enlisted in the war between the states, as my mother would say. Not the Civil War, it was the war between the states. There's a map furnished by Jack Rouse that was used during that war. Here's Union. They kind of let the die out there. There's Florence. Walton is up here, and Jack Rouse did a great job of telling about the Battle of Snow's Pond that took place in here. So you notice that Visalia Road. That is presently what's halfway road. And this road is called the Burlington Road, coming from Walton. I guess that's how you would go to Burlington, coming through Union. This is Hicks Pike. There's the church. There's the church road. That there is Ridgewood Road. Okay, move on. That's a difficult map. All right, General John Hunt Morgan. This is a grand march, and certainly the role he played in the Civil War was quite dramatic. And the story of him coming through Union, staying in Mr. Corbin's house. Okay, this is a family. This is my grandfather's grandfather, Benjamin Lewis Rice. This man here is kind of a founder of the community, Abraham Stansford. And all these women, almost all of them, are Stansfords. He never had any sons. Now, this is how I got to be related to so many people, because this is Harvey Hicks. Now, not the Harvey Hicks we know. This woman over here married David Hicks. Now, she's a Stansford. This gentleman here is a Sleet. This is Lucian Dickerson. This is Lon Voschel, a prominent man in the community with the hotel and the grocery store. They all married Stansfords. That children of that man and his wife, Ollie Orr Stansford, there. Okay, but I'm so pleased that Patricia Rochelle is here. She has relationship to the Hicks family, and Can you identify anything there?
Well, Harvey Hicks is my great-grandfather.
Oh, okay, that's your great-grandfather, because,
Great-grandfather.
and Harvey was
He
your
built- He
uncle?
was on Hicks Pike.
Yes, Hicks Pike is named for them, and the big Garrison home, because did he not marry Garrison?
No, Harvey Hicks, Elsie, Aunt Sally Bell, his sister married a Garrison.
Okay, but Hicks Pike comes from,
And Harvey built that house.
Harvey built the
Hicks
house, the
came
Garrison house, right, on Hicks Pike.
And bought land and built that house.
Right. This is the backbone of the community in the mid-1800s. This is a town plat. Now, this is coming off of the 83 Atlas, Lake 83 Atlas. Many people still have that atlas, and it's been reproduced. So, here's the corner store. That's Mount Zion Road. This is Hathaway Road. The bank, so the Union Bank, as a lot of us knew, it wasn't built until 1903, it stood there. The Clements House, that's the Ham House today, you might say. Dr. Wright's offices occupy this. This is the school, is it? No, the school, there's the school. There's the school there. And which building still stands, we'll see other pictures of that. All right. The Taliaferros, and of course, like a lot of things, the Taliaferros, they were called Tolliver. And Phil Tolliver calls it Tolliver. But also, it all seemed odd to me in my youth, across the road lived Just Delahanty, but he was always called Just Darling. I don't know. But the people would change names on that. Okay, we'll move ahead. Tuffy Barlow made this map, and it's so difficult to see there. And that's Surface Barlow. You see, his sister